everyone. Welcome to the Sleepless Cinematic Podcast, where we explore our shared love for watching and discussing movies recorded in the late after-work hours, often in lieu of a good night's rest. I'm Julian.
I'm Emilio.
And I'm Madeline. The three of us are colleagues at a Midtown Manhattan music school. Yes, music is what brings us together, but movies are what keep us together talking at the end of the night. So we've created some order to this ongoing trend by recording these conversations, considering an overarching theme while we cycle through 5 unique guidelines for engagement.
You can email us at sleeplesscinematicpod@gmail.com. Seriously, we would love to hear from you. You can follow us on Instagram and TikTok for updates, highlights, clips, and other visual supplements to the audio that we record at Sleepless Cinematic Pod, all one word.
In addition to these main episodes, we record and release bonus one-off episodes as we see fit. And while we do this, you, the listener, can count on the three of us doing what we've grown to love, foregoing sleep, for a discussion about movies every other week.
And this week, we begin a new cycle of movies featuring musicians turned actors with a category we call Viewunanimous, where we revisit a movie the three of us have all seen before and see if our initial opinions still stand, if they've changed, or if discussing the movie will make us see things we didn't see before.
Guys, it's a great night for a jump and a great night to discuss Licorice Pizza, Paul Thomas Anderson's 2021 film about life in the San Fernando Valley in the 1970s, starring the likes of Cooper Hoffman, Sean Penn, Bradley Cooper, Skylar Gisondo, Benny Safdie, and most pertinent to our conversation today, musician Alana Haim in her motion picture debut.
Yes, it was Cooper Hoffman's motion picture debut, too. It's worth saying.
That's
Definitely
true.
But yes, that both of the two leads of this movie were selected by director Paul Thomas Anderson as people who had no acting credits on their resumes, but who he thought were up for the job and who I wholeheartedly agree with.
And I believe he also wrote this part of Alana with Alana Haim in mind, because he and the Haim family go way, way back.
That's very true.
Well, before we get too deep into discussing it, it is not to be confused with other titles that may sound similar, such as Mystic Pizza.
Yes.
Which is a film from, I believe, 1988.
That's
about
correct.
a pizza shop in Mystic, Connecticut.
Yeah, and the employees, the female employees that operate there,
Yes.
their love lives. And
Yes. I haven't seen this movie. I do know it as an early appearance of the great Lily Taylor, who is a mainstay of 90s indie cinema and who I feel like I've seen in a lot of movies recently for whatever reason.
do you guys know what very famous actor had his very first speaking lines in this movie?
I do not.
Matt Damon.
That's correct.
Oh,
Yeah.
Interesting.
Partially, I know that because I'm looking at the Wikipedia page right now.
How old is he in 1988?
I think he's
17 or 18.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
he's like a teenager
All right.
in his late teens or something.
Yeah. Oh, it's looking at it now. It also has Vincent D'Onofrio in it, fresh off of Full Metal Jacket.
So yes, not to be confused with Mystic Pizza.
Yes.
Yeah, totally. This movie is also not to be confused with the movie we've talked about in the past, which is Fast Times at Ridgemont High. And the reason I say this is because, as we said in that episode, in the mall of Fast Times at Ridgemont High, you see a Licorice Pizza record store.
Yes.
very
this is
true.
Yeah, and it's also, this movie, Licorice Pizza, is not to be confused with the record store, Licorice Pizza, which was a chain of record stores in California in the 1970s.
And
Yeah.
Fast Times at Ridgemont High was also a conscious inspiration for Paul Thomas Anderson when writing this movie, too.
Absolutely. You
So
can really tell.
That's
Yeah.
another reason.
And while this movie centers around a young woman and a guy, and usually a second guy, this is not to be confused with the TV show Two Guys, a Girl, and a Pizza Place. Are you guys familiar with this show?
No,
Not at
I'm not.
all.
No.
Okay, this was a TV show that ran during my youth for 3 years. It's well known for being Ryan Reynolds' first big break.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Before Dick.
Yeah.
I think they came out kind of around that same time, but I think the title actually explains everything you need to know about it. But yes, this is not to be confused with Licorice Pizza.
Yes. And though Licorice Pizza is a film set in 1970s Los Angeles, featuring struggling actors, some clips of Richard Nixon, and an emotionally unstable hairdresser, this is not to be confused with another film we've discussed before, Shampoo.
Yes,
Oh,
that
good
is
point.
true.
Yes.
Yeah. Which was actually filmed in real 1970s Los Angeles, and Licorice Pizza was filmed in real Los Angeles in the fake 1970s.
Is Richard Nixon the historical figure that we've seen the most on film in this podcast?
Possibly. I mean, one particular
Like-
episode
Yeah.
skews things significantly that
But
way.
as you pointed out, we also discussed Shampoo, which is not in that episode.
Yes. Well, yeah, shampoo wasn't in that episode. And I mean, Nixon came up in a few other movies in that politics cycle, too.
Yeah.
There's a passing mention of him in A Face in the Crowd. So maybe. Yeah.
And I also think, if memory serves, I think one of us might have brought him up when we were discussing some of the political implications in Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Which was also done at the same time as that whole cycle.
Politics was fresh on the brain.
There you go.
So Licorice Pizza is not shampoo.
Good.
Very cool. So Emilio, what is Licorice Pizza about?
Great question, Madeline. It's 1973. We're in California, as we've discussed before, at a San Fernando Valley high school. It's here that resident student and child actor Gary Valentine meets Alana Haim, a spunky but jaded employee of Tiny Toes, the photography business hired for the high school's picture day. Despite being much younger than she is, Gary immediately puts the moves on her, telling her it's destiny that they met, and he asks her out to dinner that night. Despite being much older than him, 10 years or so his senior, and brushing off his advances in the moment, Alana reservedly shows up to meet him that night. Gary is clearly excited that his charisma has reeled Alana in, but genuinely shares what has worked for him professionally, encourages her to think bigger, and sticks to his belief that they've met for a reason. Alana seems amusingly flattered that this promising young hustler has taken an interest in her, and somewhat embarrassingly is drawn to Gary's optimism for the future. Yes, there might be teenage boy hormones at play. Be that as it may, Gary sees something special in her, which is not something she can say about herself lately. She draws a clear line that night. They are not a romantic item. Yet, he's not exactly friend-zoned either. An interesting bond forms between them. Alana accepts Gary's grab-ass energy as the trade-off for some career direction. She gets folded into his acting venture and gets an agent and becomes an important player in his burgeoning waterbed business. Gary gains a business partner that can check him here and there, and I'd argue he enjoys keeping his crush close by. As time passes, the two weave in and out of each other's lives. Both pursue more age-appropriate romantic relationships. Alana vacillates between aligning with Gary professionally and keeping him close, and distancing herself from him when his immaturity outstrips his precociousness. Gary is a kid who has mostly succeeded by acting older than his age. Alana is an adult who is trying to figure out if remaining a kid, in some small way, is meant to lead her forward in life. Through professional and personal ups and downs, what will ultimately come of Gary and Alana's relationship? That and much more is what we are here to discuss.
Indeed. Well said.
Yeah, well said. This is a tough movie to summarize. I think you did a really nice job because it's kind of a hangout movie.
Big time. Yeah.
Yeah, and it also has a very distinct flow of like chapters to it.
Yeah.
I was tempted to call them vignettes, which feels right for some parts, but they do all feel connected too.
Yeah. That actually struck me on this watch. And one thing that occurred to me when it comes to how these are all connected is at the end of the John Peters waterbed saga, when he is causing chaos on the sidewalk. And that's when you see the wax poster in the window of the post office or something. And that directly leads you in to the next story. And so I do think it's easy to look at these as disconnected, but I do think they all do have like a thread through them.
Yeah. Beyond just the two main characters both being present for them. But yeah, so this movie came out, actually, if you think about the amount of time we've been doing this podcast, it's almost as much time before we started it as it's been since we started.
Wow. Julian, with your brain for dates and details, I was not ready for that one.
Yeah.
Well, technically we've been we've been doing this for almost 2 years now. The movie came out 1.5 years before we began this. But I think it's worth saying too that one of the conversations that we all had that very closely preceded this idea of let's start a podcast had to do with this movie.
This is a good point.
Yeah.
And I do think that based on our conversation there, I felt like we were earmarking this movie a little bit.
Oh,
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think there's been ample evidence across past episodes that we've done too, that we're eventually going to get to this.
Yeah.
But now we're here. So this movie, which was released about 3.5 years ago, what did we think then? What do we think now?
I am trying to remember exactly when I saw this. Maybe when it first came to streaming on Amazon Prime. And I remember really enjoying the vibe of this movie.
Yeah.
It wastes no time in introducing our two protagonists, and they are so well rendered. I don't know.
Yeah,
The
I
two
think that's
lead-
a good word, actually.
Yeah.
yeah, the two lead performances are so winning.
Yeah.
It really does pull you into the film.
Totally.
And I feel like this movie has that just kind of running through the whole thing. Really great performances, really wonderful small performances by very big actors.
Yeah,
And we talked a
totally.
little bit up front about how Paul Thomas Anderson really targeted Cooper Hoffman and Alana Haim for these main roles. And I feel like the fish out of water element that they, as their characters, have with characters played by much more established actors.
Yeah.
It's a really fun sort of like meta thing happening in this movie.
Yeah, I think that they play so well off of like Bradley Cooper obviously is a big one. I think that the scene in the truck in particular where he's where he's choosing to completely lean over Alana in order to like direct the truck. That seems like an incredibly intimidating scene to be able to film in Alana Haim's shoes, but she's just like really rolls with it. And I think that's very, very cool.
Very good choice of words saying roles there.
Yeah,
Absolutely,
exactly.
yeah. And I'll just wrap up my thoughts on this by saying that this is such an easy breezy kind of movie to watch. We're going to get to this eventually, but I have a really big quibble about the very end of this movie.
Yeah.
And otherwise, I remember thinking it was delightful.
Yeah,
when I
I
first
think
saw it.
that was kind of the conversation that we had is that it was the last like 2 minutes.
Maybe
that-
20 seconds.
Yeah, that really did not land for you. So I'm sure we'll get to that later in the episode. Julian, I think you and I probably both saw this in theaters. Is that true?
This is true. Yeah, the first time I saw this movie was on December 10th, 2021. At Village East Cinemas, one of my favorite places in New York to see movies, on their biggest screen in 70 millimeter. And listeners, if you have not seen this movie on 70 or 35 millimeter, leap at the chance if you get it. It looks absolutely amazing on celluloid. It's really meant to be watched that way. And I think I didn't realize how much of an impression that experience had on me until watching it on a DVD to prep for this discussion and noticing the differences in image quality. But yes, I did see it in theaters. First viewing was with our very recent guest on the podcast, my cousin Sylvie. And we both loved it right away. I think that the draw of the naturalism of the two lead performances of it, but also just some of the great hallmarks of Paul Thomas Anderson in general, that there is this breezy energy mixed with a really astute attention to detail that I think he brings to all of his movies, especially this one. I had become a Paul Thomas Anderson fan long before this movie came out, so I was just, sitting in the theater for it, just ready to strap in and like lay it on me, PTA.
Yeah, totally.
And to preface a point that I'm sure we'll get into in more depth later in this conversation, I can understand how people have mixed feelings about some of the content of this movie. I personally don't have any reservations about it, and we'll elaborate on that later on. But that's just my initial statement of perspective.
Cool. Yeah, I also saw this in theaters, but I had to ask Dougie. I was like, hey, did we see this in theaters? And he was like, yes. But yeah, I do remember my general impressions being really positive. And I think it's what you were saying, Emilio. These are just fun characters to hang out with. Like,
Totally.
And it does present this really interesting, like, picture of growing up, like, youth in the 70s in Los Angeles. It's very romantic. And I don't mean that in, like, a romance, like, coupling kind of way, necessarily. The whole experience of this kind of childhood in this setting in this time, I think has a lot of romance to it.
Yeah,
Totally.
because this is when Paul Thomas Anderson was a kid.
Yeah, exactly. And so
Yeah.
I think you can really feel the authenticity and the love for this area and this time period.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think we talked a lot about this in our high school cycle, how people would say with like Dazed and Confused, how they just wanted to kind of like step into the movie and hang out with those characters. And I was like, I do not feel that way because I went to high school with them already, so I don't need to do that. But I feel that way with this movie.
Yeah.
I agree. It is beautiful, kind of like sumptuous almost to look at, and a great hang.
Totally.
We've used that word before, but this movie is a great hang.
Absolutely. And so, because we are discussing this as part of a cycle about musicians turned actors, it only feels right to start this off by talking about the requisite musician turned actor in this film, Alana Haim. I mean, technically, she is not the only one. She's the lead performance, but her two sisters, Esty and Danielle, are both prominently featured in the movie too.
I think you could also argue that her parents are musicians and they also play themselves in this movie.
That's true.
This is true. You don't see them playing music in the movie. You do, for one scene, see the three sisters singing together.
Yeah,
That is true.
That is true.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, singing a Shabbat prayer before dinner. I think, when I consider the fact that Paul Thomas Anderson boldly and rightfully cast Alana Haim in this role despite her not having acted in a movie before, it makes me think a lot of another, in certain circles, famous exchange having to do with a different musician turned actor, someone who we're not going to discuss this cycle because his best known turn is on TV, and that would be Stephen Van Zandt.
Oh, I was just thinking this.
Yes, of the E
Just
Street
thinking this,
Band,
yeah.
who famously played Silvio Dante on The Sopranos. And supposedly the exchange between him and Sopranos creator David Chase was when he was being auditioned, Stephen Van Zandt said something to the effect of, "I appreciate this, but I'm not an actor." To which David Chase said, "You are an actor. You just don't know it yet."
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Honestly,
That's
if I had no knowledge of who Stephen Van Zandt was, could have fooled me. I would have been like, this guy's won 3 or 4 Emmys, maybe an Oscar in there. He's so incredible in The Sopranos. So
Yeah.
interesting comp. I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
totally.
I think that that's on some level true of a lot of the people we're going to discuss in this episode cycle. I'd certainly say it about Alana Haim. Some of the initial praises for Licorice Pizza when it had just come out were that her performance, like, she's a total natural in the role, which I totally agree with. But it's interesting really thinking about this idea of a musician turned actor, because in a way, like, she was kind of just unconsciously auditioning for Paul Thomas Anderson
her entire life
for a while before this movie came into production.
Yeah.
Being that he is, it seems these days, the sole director of all Haim music videos. We're all musicians, and we have that connection too to knowing about this band. Like, what's our sense so far of the band Haim?
I think they're really great. I first heard about them actually from a student who was interested in learning the song The Steps.
Great song.
Yeah, very fun.
Yeah.
Good tune. Great beginner song too, by the way. If anybody out there is interested
Yeah.
in learning how to play guitar, that's a really, really good one. And yeah, I did the internet deep dive, and I was just so won over by the fact that they're sisters.
Yeah.
And multi-instrumentalists.
Yeah.
And that there's like a real McCoy aspect to them. I think they're a bit of a throwback
Yeah.
in many respects, not just in how they write, but I think also just like the spirit of them as musicians. I think their songs would feel at home in a movie like Licorice Pizza at times if you tweaked some of the production, but they also feel right at home today. So yeah, I was super won over by Haim when I first heard about them. They're great.
Totally. I can't recall when Haim first came into my life. I mean, I feel like I probably was introduced to them around the debut. Like, I've been listening to them for a long time. I'm a big fan of Haim. I did just buy tickets for their show at Madison Square Garden in the fall.
So did I.
Cool.
Yeah.
I wonder if we're sitting near each other this time.
Possibly.
Julian and I, our friendship kind of got kickstarted when I happened to see the back of his head at a Sparks concert. And we knew each other from work, but I don't think had really spoken. And I recognized the back of your head because it's very distinct.
Yeah.
I was like, hey, I know that person. And I think that really helped us have conversations of like, we have similar tastes in like weird stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. If you see someone at a Sparks concert, I mean, the fact that you're at a Sparks concert is telling enough already.
Exactly.
As has just come up, Madeline and I are both active Haim fans to the point that we're going to see them in September.
Yeah.
But that for me will not be my first time seeing them.
Right. I think I knew you'd seen them before.
Yes.
Whereas I have not. So I'm very excited.
Actually, that was just a few months after Licorice Pizza. I had been aware of the band for a long time before the movie. I think that I kind of, like you said, Madeline, I think I first became aware of them around when their debut album came out. I think they played on SNL around that time, and I saw them there. I didn't really pursue them actively as an interest, but I would hear a few songs here and there and just be like, oh, this is some good stuff.
Yeah, totally.
I think the first song of theirs that I heard and that left an impression on me was the song Forever,
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
which is on the first album, and it's a bop if you
Yeah.
haven't heard it. But
Yeah, I mean, I think that their discography is kind of all killer, no filler. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think there are any bad Haim songs. I
Right.
think all three of their albums are fantastic.
yeah.
And I find myself most often revisiting Women in Music Part 3, but the first two are incredible. And I would say all three are masterpieces in my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, love them.
And much like Paul Thomas Anderson does with his movies, they take their time with their albums.
Mhm.
You know, they're working on music all the time, but their albums come out like once every 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, it's like they only have 3 albums and they've been active, I mean, I think for over a decade.
Soon to be 4 albums.
Yeah, right. They're releasing another album this summer or
Yeah.
something.
Hence the tour.
There we go.
But for what it's worth, I don't think that I really like put the work in with this band until after seeing Licorice Pizza.
Mhm.
And
Same.
like I had a good impression of them beforehand, and I had even heard the song The Steps before seeing Licorice Pizza and been like, wow, that is a great
It's
song.
a great song.
I think
it's a
that's
fun one.
I think that's my favorite of theirs and many other people's favorite too. But
That's one of my favorites, I think. I really
Yeah.
like The Steps. I really like The Wire.
yeah.
The
And
Wire's fun.
yeah, and from the sophomore, I like Want You Back a lot.
That's a good
that
one.
starts off the album.
Yeah.
And maybe these are all too basic, but
No,
I
no.
also really like Man from the Magazine because
Oh, that's a great one.
that
Yeah.
one really reminds me of Joni Mitchell.
Mhm.
You were talking, Emilio, about how they have kind of a throwback sound
Yeah.
in a lot of
Yeah.
ways, and their songwriting in particular. And I feel like that's a track where that's really apparent.
Well, part of the thesis of that song, to use a word that Danielle Haim used when I saw them the first time, some of that song was just a reaction against blatant sexism in the music industry too.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And that, I mean, they considered that to be the thesis of the whole third album, Women in Music Part 3. But then, you know, after seeing Licorice Pizza, and like seeing how lived in this movie is, you know, particularly the performance of not just Alana, but like the whole Haim family
Totally.
in this movie.
Their scene is, I think, my favorite scene in the whole film.
Yeah, but just seeing how lived in it was, I think I figured, you know, blending that with my impression of the music so far, I thought, well, the rest of the music is probably just as lived in as well. And sure enough, it is. And then about 5 months after seeing Licorice Pizza for the first time, I saw them at MSG, and it's, not being hyperbolic, one of the best concerts I've ever been to.
See,
Very packed.
I feel like that's one of the big draws for me about them is that
Yeah.
they love to perform live. So my favorite song of theirs, I think, is going to be My Song 5.
That's a good one too.
I really,
Yeah.
it's not maybe one of their best written songs, but to me, I feel like that song would play so well live. I think it really
Yeah.
speaks at some of what they do that a lot of their contemporaries are not really known for doing.
Mhm.
Another thing that I caught is when they were first coming up and first doing festivals, they would play the song Oh Well, which is a Peter Green era Fleetwood Mac song. It's a
Mhm.
blues rock song.
Yeah.
It almost has an experimental vibe to it. It was almost like that kind of street cred
Yeah.
with older generations that they're like, no, like we grew up listening to, you know, more than just the music of our time. Like they
Yeah.
have a pretty nice understanding of music history and they've credited their parents a lot for bringing that along.
Yeah. I've always appreciated how Haim is a band where they can be as popular as they are and still each one of them really feels like a musician's musician.
Totally.
Like if you dig into the individual parts of the songs and how they're written, you really see that a lot of knowledge and care went into them. I mean, I think that, well, Emilio, you were talking about teaching the steps
Yeah.
earlier and how like I always highlight that song as a great example of the use of pentatonics.
Oh, yeah.
And it's particularly in its main riff. You know, that particular riff too, like if you know the riff from the song My Girl by the Temptations, it's hard not to think of that as well. But then, you know, given the very outspokenly feminist message of the album that is on, it really feels like they're flipping the script on that type of riff
Yeah.
in that
Sure.
way.
Sure.
So
Totally.
just one little example of the way you can analytically express love for this band.
Sure.
Yeah.
I know. I
Yeah.
feel like there's a lot of that.
You were talking, Emilio, about how they feel like they'd be very good live. Julian, you're speaking to the accuracy of this statement.
Mhm.
I mentioned Man from the Magazine, and one of the things I like about that music video is that it has live vocals, seemingly.
Oh,
Like, it's
cool.
not the studio recording at the very least. You can tell that it's a little rougher in a way that I find very endearing.
Nice. Yeah.
And PTA
Yeah.
Directed that one, right?
that, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Would you call Man in the Magazine a favorite music video of theirs?
A favorite, yes. I think my favorite is the Now I'm In It video.
Oh, fun.
That one
Yeah.
I really like because I like that it really establishes a character for Danielle that you're following. I think Man for the Magazine does that as well, and a lot of their videos do.
Mm-hmm.
But you're tracking Danielle and Now I'm In It as you do in a lot of the videos, but it's putting her in a lot of different situations. I really like it. It cuts at one point, I think in the second verse of the song, how she's now like flat on a stretcher.
Oh, yeah. I
Carried
like that
by
moment.
the other two sisters, which I really love. I like how the video kind of starts with her beating celery into a Bloody Mary, like on the beat of the song.
Yeah,
I think
good.
that's such a cool moment. I like the car wash that you kind of get during the bridge. I like that it cuts back to the car wash at the very end. I think that's a really interesting thematic choice.
Totally.
How she does kind of go on this journey throughout the video, and towards the end of it, she and the other sisters are in a bar, and the other sisters kind of are flirting with guys near them. And then in the last few seconds, it cuts back to her in the car wash. And I just think that's a very cool moment.
You know who also likes that car wash detail? My son.
Oh,
He
cool.
loves car washes.
Car washes are cool. And I
Yeah.
think they're particularly cool when you're really little.
Oh, they're amazing.
I haven't seen all of the PTA directed Haim music videos, but the ones that I have seen, the ones that stand out to me, one that I think is one of their most watched music videos is Summer Girl.
Yeah, that one's great.
Like the three sisters are all walking down the streets of Los Angeles in various locations. I think that I like went into it expecting it to be one shot, which it's not.
Yeah.
But
It feels like it kind of could be.
yeah, but it still is, I think, like a very good example of, like part of why like Haim and Paul Thomas Anderson's energies mix so well together. The sense of like breezy, easygoing vibes mixed with some really, I'll use the same term as before, astute attention to detail.
Sure.
And then, I mean, the other video there's that I can think of most vividly right now is the video for the steps.
Yeah.
And what
that
I-
one's very fun.
It's a fun video. And what I like about it stylistically is that the song is like a very anthemic, arena filling song.
Yeah.
But the video is much more intimate.
Right.
That it takes place in mostly these like pretty tight interiors. As you see different shots of the sisters smearing makeup on their faces out of frustration.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
So
I like when they all spit.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I think to this point of like the unity between them and Paul Thomas Anderson, there's this mix of the epic and the mundane in that video that I think really hits the spot for me.
I'll piggyback a
Yeah.
little bit off of that. My favorite music video of theirs is A Little of Your Love.
That one's such a good hang.
I like that one because I think it really captures the joy that
Yeah.
the three of them seem to get from making music. And I like Want You Back Too as this kind of other side of the coin because I feel like that video is a little bit more of one of those enigmatic myth-making
Yeah.
type videos where it's very minimalist. And I think both of those videos capture very important aspects that we see in all of their videos, which is they do a lot of walking. They
Yeah.
do a lot of choreographed dancing.
Yeah.
The other thing is it centers all three of them somewhat equally. And I think
Yeah.
that's something that you really see in those two videos, but that is a feature of pretty much everything that they've done with PTA.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, this has been really fun because I love talking about Haim. Let's dive in a little bit to the movie we're here to discuss, Licorice Pizza.
Let's do it.
So you already gave us a quick little premise of this movie. We have Gary Valentine and we have Alana Haim. And, they have this age gap, but they also have this friendship that maybe turns into something a little bit more. And so I would want to know, why do you guys think Gary and Alana are drawn to each other? Because they seem, in my opinion, to be drawn to each other for kind of different reasons. So I'm curious as to why you guys think each of them are drawn to the other and what each of them get out of this relationship.
I mean, I think that Gary's initial attraction to her is just purely surface level, that like he thinks that she's pretty or something. But then when they start to talk and get to know each other, I think there's a curiosity that both of them have about each other. And that after that first interaction, I think what starts to unfold is that Gary, he's a motivated kid, and he sees in Alana someone who is resourceful, but maybe a little bit less sure where she wants to go, and that maybe he can bring some direction into her life.
Why do you say that he thinks she's resourceful?
Well, that's something I think that is a little bit more made evident later in the movie.
Yeah.
Like, especially when you think of like the truck is rolling down the hill, that it's really Alana who saves the day there.
Yeah, and it's actually Alana Haim driving this truck.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like, as far as like when he realizes that she is a resourceful person, I'm not sure exactly when that moment happens, but that is something that over the course of the movie, I think he sees in her and values in her too.
Yeah, after the point where she's gone on like a date with Skylar Gisondo and brought him home and it went really badly, and then you never see him again. He's disappeared.
Yeah.
And she kind of goes back to Gary as a friend and then starts working with him on this waterbed business, and she calls herself his business partner. And so I think by that point, your point is totally taken, that he does see the value that she brings.
Right. I think, as you said, Julian, I think Gary just thinks she's hot. At the outset of the film, the thing that Alana sees in Gary is somebody who is really happy with where they're at now in life.
Yeah.
It's validated for us almost right away that Alana is not happy with where she is.
Yeah.
I do love that very long take that kind of follows him through the gymnasium and then ushers him out the back. And then as she's walking towards the camera, she gets slapped on the rear end by the photographer.
Yeah.
As just a really effective way of conveying what she's up against and the reasons she might have for feeling very frustrated and being drawn to somebody who is so content with what they've done so far and what they're planning on doing.
Yeah, she does have like a bit of desperation, I think, to be able to move into something better in her life. And maybe we can get into this later when we talk about the ending, but she says she's 25. She later says she's 28, but at either of those ages, you're definitely at a point in your life where if you're not pursuing a passion of yours, then I think you become pretty desperate to find a passion.
For sure.
Yeah, and I mean, there was an interaction that Gary and Alana have on the dinner that they have at Tail of the Cock, where I wrote this down, that Alana says, "You're sweet, Gary. You're going to be rich in a mansion by the time you're 16. I'm going to be here taking photos of kids for their yearbooks when I'm 30. You're never going to remember me." To which he replies, "I'm not going to forget you." And I mean, I think that, you see, some of the forces that bring them together in that interaction too, but there's a friction too that is also evident there, that at first Alana also, like, she admires how content Gary is with his current station in life. But I also think that she is a realist, and she has to, in order to go along with all the things that he's proposing, she has to be won over or convinced on some level.
Yeah. And I do think that she just likes how much he likes her.
That's also true.
I think that is an unspoken but very real part of this movie.
And I think that's kind of a valid emotion when you're going through a tough time in life, for somebody to look up to you and put you on a pedestal.
Definitely.
Like, there's something very appealing about that. It strokes your ego a little bit.
For sure. I think there are some really powerful scenes too around that portion of the movie where you get a glimpse at both Gary and Alana's family lives too.
Yeah.
Where Gary and his brother Greg are basically latchkey kids. You see a few pretty evocative scenes of Gary and Greg in their living room living what seems to be a pretty listless home life.
A lot of TV.
Yeah. Whereas Alana is coming from something that seems a lot more insular. Like, I don't know how accurate this is to how the Haim family is in real life, or the Canes as they are named in this movie. But, she comes home and her two sisters who are older than her all still live with their parents.
Yeah, and it's like, do they still live together, or are they just so close that they're over all the time? Either way, she has a very tight-knit home community.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
There's some strictness that is present in the family's life, whether it has to do with religious background or just, personalities of the people, that it feels like a very tight space that she's living in there.
Yeah.
And that she just wants to break out of. I want to say too, while we're talking about Alana's home life in this movie, I love her interactions with Esty.
Yeah.
I remember seeing an interview with Alana Haim on some talk show. I think it might have been Seth Meyers, around when the movie came out, where she it was that scene where Alana is screaming at Esty and Esty just kind of raises her eyebrow like, oh well, yeah, she has a point. Okay, here's the quote.
Why would you do that?
Why would you do that? Alana's yelling at Esty saying, "What are you thinking? I'm Esty. I work for mom and dad. I'm perfect. I'm a real estate agent. Alana doesn't have her life together. Alana brings home stupid boyfriends all the time." And that's when
the eyebrow
raises.
Yeah.
And I think Seth Meyers, if it was him, pointed to that moment and said, is that real? And Alana was like, oh, 100%. That's their real sibling dynamic.
I've pulled that scene up a couple times just to watch it. It's hilarious. It's also really well shot. I think it was also not really scripted.
Mm-hmm.
PTA, I think, kind of directed the family to be like, all right, well, so this is the outcome of this scene. Get there however you think it would happen. And so, you get a really fun glimpse into their actual family dynamic. It's great.
Yeah. What's also interesting in the P.T. Anderson filmography about that scene is that one scene earlier, the first time we see Alana come home, that, she goes off to her bedroom and then Esty just pokes her head in and is like, where were you? Why are you dressed like that? Were you on a date? Looks like it was a long date before Alana's like, oh, leave me alone.
Yeah.
I also love that her dad's shooting hoops in the front.
Yeah,
totally.
I love that.
But I had to think of one other Paul Thomas Anderson movie in that moment, which is Punch Drunk Love. And that Esty Haim in that scene makes me think a lot of the Mary Lynn Ricegub character in that movie.
Yes.
The way that she is just always
nosy.
Nosy and just always kind of ribbing on the Adam Sandler character.
Right.
So
it's a little manically,
Yeah. So it feels both in character, like at home in the Paul Thomas Anderson filmography, but also probably just how it really is with those sisters.
Yeah. I'm wondering if this could be a nice time for us to quickly pivot over to Comparison Corner.
Yeah,
sure.
Where we talk about a film that came to mind when watching this one. There was one that came to my mind just in big flashing red lights, which is the film Rushmore. Another film about a very precocious 15-year-old who becomes infatuated with an older woman who in turn takes an interest in him, only to realize associating with him might not necessarily be what's best for her. And both of these movies have very defined visual styles that feature a lot of tracking shots and long takes. They're made by American auteur filmmakers with the last name Anderson.
That's true.
Both feature really fun soundtracks from music from the late 60s and early 1970s. They feature love triangles between a young male protagonist, the female love interest, and perceived and legitimate suitors. They also have their main young male protagonist tamper with a car of someone who he believes is putting the moves on his lady friend. And the precocious teenagers at the center of these films are also able to acquire capital to take on expensive projects. For Gary, it's several business ventures, at least one of which flames out. And for Max, it's the multi-million-dollar aquatic center to be built on Rushmore's campus.
Cool.
Well said.
Do you think that Gary and Max would be effective business partners, or would they implode each other?
I think they would implode. I think they would cancel each other out.
I think that they would be good friends who work separately.
Yes, I could see that.
In my business world, a lot of times you talk about the innovator as somebody with kind of the big ideas, and then you have somebody who's more of the nuts and bolts behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of business philosophy talks about these being the most effective partnerships. And I think that both of those guys are innovators,
yes.
and that doesn't normally work out very well.
I would agree.
Well, I think you mentioned this in the Spinal Tap episode too, the innovator and the integrator.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, in the dynamic we see in Licorice Pizza, that Gary can certainly be the innovator, but Alana's more of an integrator.
Totally. I think that's why they work well together.
Yeah.
And maybe part of their attraction to one another, maybe.
Totally.
Yeah.
Also, to add to your Rushmore comparison, that the lead actor of that movie, Jason Schwartzman, is also someone who was just up and coming at that time, but born into a Hollywood dynasty.
And also a musician. He was a drummer for Phantom Planet.
That's true.
Boom!
Yeah. And, we haven't said it yet, but Cooper Hoffman is the son of the late, great Phillip Seymour Hoffman.
Good point. Some of his mannerisms, watching the movie, you can really see it. Yeah.
Yeah. And also, we've discussed Paul Thomas Anderson before, but we haven't discussed any of the movies that feature Phillip Seymour Hoffman, and that he was someone who Paul Thomas Anderson kind of just cast based on vibes at first.
Yeah.
Totally.
And got this really fruitful relationship with him. So I think it's only fitting that Cooper Hoffman should come in kind of in a similar way.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And as you said, we have discussed Paul Thomas Anderson before. We discussed Inherent Vice very early on in our podcast. And that's a movie that I thought about a little bit, not just for Paul Thomas Anderson, but it's also LA in the 1970s.
Yeah, good point.
And even though that movie, it's based on a book, there's more outright plot because there's a mystery that needs solving in that movie. But it still is like a very vibey movie.
Totally. I would agree.
Yeah, like those two together, I think that the way that both movies are plotted can feel kind of freewheeling, that they have like an energy of their own, where like those movies, they know what they are.
Totally.
Yeah, well, to continue with comparisons, one that I was like a little surprised I found myself making at first, but the comparison I want to make here is to the last Unanimous that we had, Frances Ha.
Yeah.
Oh.
There's a lot of running.
There's a lot of running. But it's also...
Dougie pointed that out to me. He was like, you just discussed another movie with a lot of running.
But yeah, Frances Ha is also a movie, centrally about the relationship between two best friends that, I mean, I remember reading a lot in the build up to that conversation that it was a friendship movie treated the way that romances are often treated.
Yeah.
But also in thinking about the narrative structure of the films, the narrative chapters all seem to be based around certain places and endeavors. And when you get further on in Licorice Pizza, I think the same thing is true there too.
Totally.
I like that. That's good.
And one other movie that I have to think of, it's a more recent film, one that I have brought up before, but I think I'm still the only one here who has seen, which is Between the Temples.
Right. Yeah. I wanted to see this.
It's a really great movie. I highly recommend it. The point of comparison that I think of there is that that's another movie concerning a central dynamic between characters that might from afar appear to be strange or problematic to some people, but that the movie does a really nice job of articulating the nuances of. And I attended an opening night Q&A at Lincoln Center for Between the Temples, where one of the co-writers of that movie, C. Mason Wells, was contrasting that movie with Harold and Maude, saying that, and for the record, I like Harold and Maude a lot, but I do understand his point of criticism here, which is that he feels like that movie is a little bit too neat, especially when it gets towards its end. I like how Harold and Maude goes about what it does, but I do understand that view. Part of his effort in co-writing Between the Temples was to portray something messier, but in an honest way. And I feel like Licorice Pizza does a lot of that too.
Harold and Maude is also an admitted huge influence and reference on the film Rushmore and the visual style of Wes Anderson.
There we go.
So it's all interrelated, guys.
Yes.
That has been Comparison Corner.
Thank you.
Love it.
Is that the only segment that we're going to close off decidedly that way?
You know what? For now, I feel like this is an evolving thing.
Yeah, totally. Maybe we'll write like a little fun interim like music cue for Comparison Corner.
Sure.
Just float in that as an idea.
All right.
All right. It has been floated. Speaking of moving, you talked about running.
Yeah, and there's I notice it more each time I watch. This is a very motif heavy movie. As much as it can feel like a, like kind of loose hangout movie, I've noticed many intentional things about it. And there's three in particular that I want to point out. One of which is there right at the beginning of the movie, is mirrors. A lot of notable scenes in the movie involving mirrors. The second, this is more of just a broader cinematography detail, but overexposed backlighting. Sometimes it just feels incidental. Other times I feel like it's so in focus it has to be intentional. And the third motif is running. And we can work through each of these individually, but let's start with mirrors. Did either of you have any moments that struck you in the movie that involved mirrors?
There's one big one that jumps out to me, and it's not really mirrors, but it's reflections. That moment when Gary has been falsely arrested.
Yeah.
And
for murder.
Yeah, I know, right? Pretty intense. But yeah, he has been, I guess, let go and
unhandcuffed.
Yeah, unhandcuffed. And there's a really interesting shot where you see Alana outside. I think it's a reflection of her, but you see Gary, I guess, still seated and trying to make the decision of whether or not he's supposed to leave.
Yeah.
And then at one point he does, but the camera doesn't change position. Gary just happens to walk into a part of the set where he is now able to be joined in the reflection with Alana. It's pretty cool. My armchair theory on this maybe has to do with the fact that this movie is so much about portraying a really particular time And I think sometimes we don't have to dig too deep. A reflection can literally stand in for our minds creating this image of feeling like something was the most dangerous, scary thing that's ever happened to you, and the relief of knowing that everything was going to be okay. That's just what's hitting me right now.
Yeah, I like the end of this moment that you're talking about. They hug, and it's a really long shot.
Yeah.
It's a really long hug.
Long hug. I was going to say long hug.
This is them making up. Like, they've been kind of separate for a while.
Yep.
And this is the moment that brings them back together.
Right.
For a big chunk of the movie. So I think that's really beautiful. I don't know that I necessarily have a thought on the motif when it comes to mirrors, but the mirror moment that sticks out to me is when she's driving.
Yeah.
When she's driving the truck, you get a lot of great shots that just focus on the side view mirrors, and you see her through the side view mirrors.
Yes.
And have you driven a large truck?
I have.
Yes, I have also driven a large truck, and
it's hard.
Really have to utilize the mirrors.
You got to, yes.
I've driven U-Hauls of various sizes,
Definitely.
But it's been a while, and you really have to utilize the mirrors. So I was feeling a lot of stress for Alana in this moment, and Alana Haim, who actually, like I said earlier, did this driving as she actually learned how to drive this truck. So it was extremely stressful to me any time when she was having to do these stunts where either you're kind of edging along past the car that you don't want to hit, or again, the really long part of the scene where they've run out of gas and they just have to coast backwards, and she's still having to use these mirrors to spin around. It's very, very stressful, but very effective. And like I said, a lot of times it just focuses on her in the side view mirror, which I think is cool.
And correct me if I'm wrong, isn't she doing that thing where she's looking in the mirror, but because of where the camera is placed, it sort of looks like she's looking right at the camera?
A couple of times I do think you get that,
Yeah, and speaking of that particular visual presentation, like one of the moments that I think is very remarkable that involves both the character of Alana and a mirror too is actually the last instance of this in the movie, which is in the dinner that she is invited to by Joel Wax, which turns out to just be him breaking up with his boyfriend, Matthew. Amidst all of that happening, there's this huge mirror alongside the table that they're all sitting at. And I love the way that scene is shot, where you see Alana's reflection alongside Matthew, Joel's erstwhile boyfriend, also in the frame while Joel is out of the frame.
I love that he's the main one speaking, he and Matthew, but he's not in the shot at all.
Exactly.
I love that choice.
That is my favorite acting moment from her. It is asking so much of her to portray a look of hopefulness, to confusion, to kind slowly realizing, and then
betrayal.
Then betrayal, like feeling like another one of these hopeful moments in my life is just completely evaporated.
Yeah. And after the slew of odd jobs that she's worked to this point, that's the moment when she's just kind of like, I can't do this anymore. And also just, on a technical level, I have to wonder, like, how on earth did they hide the camera in, the way that scene is shot? Like, you'd think the camera would be right there in the mirror reflection.
Yeah, I mean, it makes me think of Network. When we talked about Network, there's that one scene in the office where there's a lot of windows in the office. Even the walls going out into the rest of the building are windowed. And they talk on the commentary about how they had to be very intentional about where they place the camera so that they don't get any reflection, the camera and the lighting.
Right.
Yeah, and just to note a few other notable mirror scenes that I caught in the movie. So the very first scene, when you see Gary and his friends combing their hair in the
cherry bomb
before the cherry bomb bursts. I mean, the first appearance of Alana, she is holding up a mirror.
That's true.
Yeah, I'm offering that to all the people on the line. And then there's also...
He's the one that takes her up on it.
Yes.
That's true.
But also, in the dressing room scene before Gary goes on stage in his musical number with the Lucille Ball stand-in, there's a mirror there. Also, when Alana and Gary are hearing the first ad for Fat Bernie's on the radio.
I love that scene.
Yeah, they're in the studio. You see their reflections through the recording booth window.
Because you're mostly focused on the radio, like DJ or whoever's reading the commercial.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
It flips from both perspectives, which I love.
Yeah.
You see it from them looking through the glass into the DJ booth, and then from the DJ booth looking out to them.
Yeah.
Each one getting a kind of complementary, reflective image. It's very cool.
Agreed. And then the last one that I caught was in that bathroom scene at the Mikado when Alana runs into her friend Frisbee, who reveals something about Gary that maybe he wouldn't have wanted Alana to know. To the extent that there's meaning to all this presence of mirrors, I feel like the mirrors are just present at moments of significant reflection, appropriately for these characters, whether it be rolling down the hill or, you know, in that final dinner, or really all of them.
Speaking of Frisbee, do you guys know who plays Frisbee?
Oh, definitely.
I can't remember
Destry
right now.
Allen Spielberg.
Oh, yeah.
One of two Spielbergs. Daughters, by the way, in this.
Sasha Spielberg is the
other one.
A Tiny Toes employee.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. She's like, should I get his autograph?
Oh, yeah.
She's like, no, don't.
You don't
have to.
Speaking of industry children in this movie, but this has to do with a more personal connection of mine that maybe the average viewer would not notice, but you may have seen in the credits that there's, you know, one of Gary's friends named Mark is played by an actor named Griff Giacchino, who, you know, if you are familiar with that last name, you might make the connection to the composer Michael Giacchino. Famously the composer of the score for films like Up and some of the more recent Star Wars films too, I believe.
Did not know this. Very cool.
But the personal connection here is that I happened to be college classmates with another kid of his. His name's Mick, who appears in this movie as an extra in a few scenes.
Oh, cool.
You know, that was one moment during this movie where I could honestly say, I know that guy.
Very cool.
And I have no idea if Mick is aware of this podcast, but if you are, hi, Mick.
You also were talking about the overexposed backlighting.
Yes.
Like, I know what that meant, but I couldn't picture in my mind where these scenes were taking place.
And I had headphones in while you guys had this conversation, so I still don't really know the answer to this. So if you want to give a quick...
Yeah, well, I think the best example of that I can give is during the Joel Wax chapter of the movie when Alana and Brian, who's the friend who got her involved in that campaign, are closing up the office. As they dim the lights, the painted exterior of a building adjacent to theirs is very, very brightly lit.
Right.
In the
yellow.
background. Yeah, it's yellow. And I've noticed like the color yellows, I feel like that's the color of that chapter of the movie. We've got this very bright background behind a darkened foreground. I felt like the contrast is so stark that it has to be intentional. You know, maybe it's just simply displaying some of the contrasts in her current situation. But then in thinking of some other scenes that had like this really overexposed lighting, I also think of that moment when, like, after in the John Peters chapter, after like he is like stormed into his garage looking for an oil can.
There's no gasso in the car, Steve-O.
Yeah.
And he was bragging about how his car was all gassed up.
The lighting of that garage, though, very, very bright.
Yeah.
And so, you know, some of this may be like my memory of seeing the film on celluloid talking, but I just felt like, you know, it really struck me watching it. And I felt like these have to be intentional details.
I think you're definitely right that there's intentionality to it.
Mm-hmm.
This didn't necessarily strike me at all.
Same here.
In my watch. So I think your point of having seen it on 70 millimeter, even though you're not rewatching it on 70 millimeter, I'm sure that those scenes would have struck you a lot.
Mm-hmm.
A lot more poignantly at the time seeing it in that format. Whereas Emilio and I have not experienced that. We've just DVD and just a regular AMC
streaming.
screen.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I would venture a guess to say that some of that might be period detail. I mean,
sure.
Some of the kind of fluorescence
Totally.
that was very pervasive in the 1970s.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there is something too about if something is overexposed, it does sometimes feel a little bit unnatural to the eye, but not in a way that feels unsettling, just draws your attention a little bit more. Sometimes decisions like that come back to directorial tendencies. Like, I feel like I've seen that same type of overexposure in a film that we just talked about, Punch Drunk Love.
Yeah.
That film is full of that. And so maybe when PTA wants to dial up the tweaked romantic comedy thing, he goes for that.
Maybe. I mean, I would have to rewatch it. I feel like that would not be out of place in Inherent Vice as well.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that is just a PTA hallmark. But and in scenes like that one in the closing of The Office, part of what that contrast serves to display, I think, is just in regards to period detail, like the vivid colors of that time of like, the way that business exteriors would be painted in 1973 San Fernando Valley. But it didn't come across to me as like, Paul Thomas Anderson simply flaunting like, I can do this. It really felt like true, like it was portraying a truth of that time.
Yeah.
And when I think about like the truths of this movie, I mean, we haven't really said it yet, but there is a lot of real life in the narrative of this movie.
Yeah.
That, whether it just be the casting of Alana Haim as a character with the same first name, or that like her family seems to be ostensibly exactly what it is in real life, transposed into the 1970s. There's that, but also that like Gary Valentine is based on this character, on someone who Paul Thomas Anderson actually knows, an actor named Gary Getzman, who had some similar developments in his own life, including being wrongfully arrested at a teenage fair.
Jeez.
Get out of here.
Yeah, that was based on something that actually happened.
That detail is so specific. I'm not surprised that was plucked from the headlines.
I mean,
so to speak.
that moment, it really shocks you because it comes out of nowhere.
Yeah,
it really does.
That whole sequence at the teenage fair made me think a lot of Boogie Nights.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. There's also the presence of John C. Reilly.
That's as true as, Herman
Munster.
Fred Gwynn claiming to be Herman Munster.
Right, exactly. There's a little bit of obfuscation, I think, in the credits there, too.
They don't even credit him. I think.
No, they don't. I think they credit it as himself.
Herman Munster. Oh, nice. I didn't even catch that. Nice.
Mm-hmm.
The randomness of that moment made me think a lot of like the donut shop scene in Boogie Nights.
Yeah.
Right.
As well as like the long steady cam shot of Gary entering that space made me think a lot of the first shot of Boogie Nights.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Yep.
For sure.
Anyway, one more motif that has come up is that of running. And I mean, I was jotting down examples of all these different things throughout the movie, and this I actually have the fewest bullet points for, though I think that when running does happen, it's very notable in the movie.
I was listening to The Big Picture. I got through part of their episode on Licorice Pizza, which came out around the time the movie came out. And one, I think, really interesting point that they made about the running is that when you have these actors who this is their film debut, they're not necessarily trained actors, but running is something that anybody can do.
Mm-hmm.
It's very human, it's very corporeal, and it's very magnetic. I think that you see these people running. You see this a lot, and even in the movie, it comes back towards the end. You get a very short montage of other points where she's been running because they're running towards each other.
Right, definitely do. Yeah,
they've been separated, and then as they both are coming back together at like the pinball palace, they see each other and they start running, and you get these clips of the running that's been happening earlier, and it's so captivating. And I think it's because it feels so human.
Right. Mm-hmm. And it's specifically moments where the two of them are running after one another in a moment of crisis.
Yeah.
I think that's important to note.
Totally.
Yeah, when Gary has been wrongfully arrested, and then when Alana has, she's sat on the back of Jack Holden's motorcycle, and as he has taken off, she, to the attention of seemingly no one but Gary, has fallen off.
Like shoots off, basically.
Shoots off.
But probably ends up way better than if she had stayed on.
This is a good point.
Yeah,
actually.
that's very true.
She probably, the best case scenario just happened.
The guitar didn't turn out too well.
That's
though.
true.
She messed up Danielle's guitar.
That was a hard moment to watch. Yeah. Yeah. So there are those climactic scenes of the characters running for each other. But there's also there are scenes where they run with joy too. Like after the radio advertisement, they're running right out the door to answer phones at Fat Bernie's.
That reminds me of That Thing You Do.
Yeah,
yes.
Very much.
Totally, 100%.
There's also later on in the movie, the scene when Gary when the waterbed business has tanked and he's made the move
No pun intended. Or pun intended.
Pun intended.
All of
very much
Julian's
intended.
puns are intended. We have established this.
But after that has happened and Gary has made the move to opening a pinball palace, that when he and all of his friends are handing out flyers for the grand opening, they're running there too, more seemingly out of excitement. And then, one other moment I caught of running is, when David Bowie's Life on Mars plays, that Gary and Greg are running down the street because there's this gas shortage. And well, I think Greg is riding a bike as that all happens.
Yeah, but Gary's running.
Yeah, but just to portray what they have to do in light of the gas shortage before they use what little they have to go up the hill to John Peters' place.
And Gary says it's the end of the world.
Yeah. It's not like you have to be too analytical to understand the meaning of it in the movie, but it's just a very noticeable aspect.
Yeah.
I don't think of too many other movies that foreground running in quite that way, that aren't about like marathons or races. Or
I was
like
also thinking though, the French Connection, there's running, particularly in the beginning of that movie, but also plenty of other spots. And when we talk French Connection, I also brought up Run Lola Run, which is maybe the greatest running movie of all time.
Yeah.
That isn't like Chariots of Fire or something.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Another film that I am thinking about when I think of consequential running scenes is The Worst Person in the World.
Oh yeah.
And
I still haven't seen this, but I know there's running.
Yes, yeah.
That's an interesting scene though, because it's kind of surreal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. But I think that film and Licorice Pizza are trying to portray a sense of restlessness that you feel. Yeah. And Licorice Pizza, the restlessness doesn't feel existential, maybe a little bit more so for Alana, but it feels very tied to just a time in your life, particularly for Gary and his friends. The idea of restlessness and feeling like you got to dart around. It just reminds me also of that time when you're not allowed to drive.
Yeah.
That I think also harkens back to some of the just nostalgia. This movie is dripping in nostalgia, I think. And so the running feels very tied to when you got to just figure it out. You want to get places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, very well said.
All right, well, I think we're pretty much at the end of the movie.
I think so.
And so we've got to talk about it. The time has come.
The time has come. Thank you. Yes. As was mentioned before, I have told you guys off mic that while I think this is a very watchable, very likable, very winning movie, I do have a pretty big quibble about the last ending note. And I'm curious, on a personal level, does this movie succeed in making you want Alana and Gary to end up romantically together? And why or why not?
So, I mean, it's funny that you say end up there, because I think that this movie, like, I've always understood it, I judge it purely based on the moment in time that it portrays. And I think that while you see this consummation of the relationship between the two at the end there, with that arcade kiss that they have, I try not to read too much into any suggestion of future from that. I actually think of an anecdote that I heard on the Blank Check podcast. I was listening when we did our West Side Story episode. I was listening to their episode about the Spielberg West Side Story, which came out around the same time as Licorice Pizza. And they said that, a friend of their podcast, the film critic Esther Zuckerman, had just interviewed Alana Haim a few days before about what does she think happens, or she had asked her as a question, what does Alana think happens after the credits roll in the movie? And it was something to the effect of, Gary probably accidentally knocks Alana over somewhere, and then it's back to square one with those two.
Yeah, I agree with you in that even though it ends on the note of maybe they would try to be together romantically, I think this relationship is doomed for a lot of reasons. And I think all reasons that are valid.
Yes. I think so too.
I 100% do not pull for them in a romantic relationship. I'd say I kind of barely pull for them as friends. Like I do. They have a very sweet friendship. It's still like a kind of inappropriate friendship. I don't think they can be friends as equals until he gets a little older. And they certainly can't be in a romantic relationship effectively. That is my thought.
Well, I mean, to go back to the conversation that Sylvie and I had after we first saw the movie, adding to all of these points, that what we were saying about Licorice Pizza is that regardless of anyone's standards about relationships that they might have, looking at the relationship that is portrayed in the movie, like whether you approve of it or not, the movie feels honest and that this is something that can honestly happen in the real world. So I think there is a whether you like it or not element in the honesty of portraying this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I see that. I will definitely put the issues of like potential grooming or the underage aspect of this relationship to the side for now. If you want to go there, I think you can go there. But what I like to focus on and argue for is that I think this movie would have an empirically better ending if they don't actually romantically, physically consummate this.
Yeah.
I think it would imply a certain amount of growth from them, that this type of friendship, as strained as it might be, is something that they can have in their life, but doesn't have to turn into something romantic.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something just kind of weird about how the movie is shot. I mean, I would push back a tiny bit on the idea that PTA is not insinuating that there's going to be some sort of romantic tale to what we see. It's shot so much to me like, oh, look, the partner you've always wanted all along has been there the whole time.
It absolutely is.
It 100% does. I actually think it kind of cheapens it a bit. I mean, I talked about the idea of growth. Other films that really go there and do this would be like a film like Lost in Translation. Another film I think of that I love, that I think is just beautifully done, that handles this so nicely. I think it's such a stronger movie because of this, is Once. And I would even argue that a film like a much more populist film like My Best Friend's Wedding is so much better because the movie realizes that there's something bigger to be gained by not falling into this convention.
Well, to add to that list of movies, and something that I know you mentioned you saw recently that I saw recently too, the Joan Micklin Silver film, Chilly Scenes of Winter.
Totally.
Yeah.
That's another great one where you're like, you actually feel like the character gets somewhere. And because the character goes somewhere, you feel like you've gone somewhere. But yeah, and I mean, I agree. Like, I just feel like this is a totally doomed relationship.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say this too. PTA wants you to care about these characters. Yeah. I don't think he doesn't want that. They're portrayed way too favorably in spite of some of the flaws that they might have. Isn't the best thing for them not to hook up?
Yeah, totally. That's definitely true. And what's interesting that I thought more about on my rewatch is the fact that they have started to kind of grow apart. There's a rift between them.
Yes.
And I do see why PTA would want to bring them back together in some way as a button on this movie. They need to be able to make up at the end of this movie. They don't need to kiss.
Make out. They don't need. I like that. I like the idea of them making up. I don't like the idea of them kissing.
Yeah, we say up, not out.
There you go.
I noticed this the first time I saw it as well. It's that last line hits so weird.
It does.
It's so odd to me. However you feel about the fact that they kiss and that they seem like they're going to pursue some sort of romantic relationship, the fact that it then has to add like one more moment where they're running and she says, "I love you, Gary." I'm like, well, what is this? I don't like the "I love you, Gary" because there's really, like, we've seen her grow. It feels like she's kind of regressing.
Thank you.
Like, we've seen her become interested in age-appropriate men. And I will say, one of them did let her down.
Totally.
So she's like, well, and even like the boyfriend, Wax's boyfriend, Matthew, is kind of like, oh, they're all shit. So I think she's just kind of given up.
But give up and then go there. I agree with you. And again, it literally comes down to like the last 20 or 30 seconds. Like the decision for them to kiss to me is just like really just misses the mark. I love that when he comes back, he's like, "Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Alana Valentine."
And she's like,
"What are exactly?" And I actually kind of like that because I think it kind of resets you on the dynamic that they have.
Totally.
And you don't need anything else.
Yeah, that's enough.
It's enough.
It also makes me think is this kind of breadcrumbed for us throughout the movie. I think about the implications that she lied to him about her age. And I'm like, well, why? What is her motivation for lying to this 15-year-old and taking 3 years off of her age? Why did she do that?
That's a good point. Maybe trying to make herself feel younger in some respects.
Yeah.
Like maybe this is not so bad if she's 25 and he's 15 or 16.
But Julian, I am curious to hear your thoughts. I don't think I hated it the way that you hate it, Emilio, but I had a lot of fun talking about this, and I think that all of your points are valid, and I share opinions on a lot of them. But Julian, I'm curious to where you're at.
Well, going back to like the interaction that Sylvia and I had outside the theater or right after seeing it, I mean, it just sort of felt like that ending. It's like, it just kind of feels like what those characters would do, in terms of understanding their relationships. I understand everything both of you are saying about like, this is not good for you guys, or this is a moment of regression, but I don't think that makes it dishonest to say that it's a moment of regression. And, that it's like what we see is a pretty impulsive thing, and that there has been this back and forth throughout the movie of them being kind of pulled away and being pulled back to each other, that they are the most consistent lifeline that each one has.
I will say this, you use the word impulsive, maybe for the characters, not in the direction. That scene is shot so beautifully.
Yeah.
It is
like a rom-com.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like the culminating moment of this whole film is that they
finally kiss.
But, when you think about the ends of other rom-coms, I'm thinking in particular of Clueless, and there's, with the way the last two scenes of that movie.
Maybe I love Josh.
Yeah. When you think of the way the last few scenes of that movie are arranged, it's clear that like some time passes in this relationship, and that like, it's not just, one night that we see at the end of Licorice Pizza. It's, and like that one night comes at the end of a long string of things. Sure. But still, I mean, like going back to like Alana Haim herself, like her read on what happens, that it's, probably the cycle that we see in the movie keeps on going even afterward.
Is that what we want for them though?
Well, is it really about what we want for them? Like, it's like, see, that's an interesting thing, because I don't really think that much about what I want for them watching a movie. I just think, would this happen?
I hear that, but I feel like the way PTA shoots them and the care with which he tries to craft their stories, I don't think he really wants to leave us with like, oh, these crazy kids are just going to do what they do and they have to learn the hard way. I don't feel that in the final note.
I see what you're saying. I am kind of thinking back to, Julian, what you mentioned about Frances Ha, about how that's a friendship that's shot and directed like a romance would be. Maybe that's one direction he was going, is on this ending. Let's shoot a friendship, a friendship romance, like that's kind of like a little bit of both as a full romance, I guess. Maybe. Yeah. In a similar way that Frances Ha did with two actual platonic friends.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And when I think of like the ends of other Paul Thomas Anderson movies, some of them feel strange for comparison, but when you think about the movie that directly preceded Licorice Pizza, Phantom Thread, I mean, that's another movie where you could, without getting into specifics, you could possibly argue that, it ends on what feels like a pretty pat note and the culmination of this really complicated relationship. But I don't necessarily think, if it ends succinctly, I don't think that means that the life of these characters after the credits roll is quite so neat. I think I look at Licorice Pizza similarly.
It's weird though, because the ending of Phantom Thread suggests that there's a balance that's going to be struck. I don't feel anything like that at the end of Licorice Pizza.
And I think for me, it's because of that final line. I think it takes a little bit of agency from her, because he is not, like, he has been the one throughout the film, I think, to express like admiration for her. And she hasn't necessarily reciprocated that. And so I guess this is like the one moment when she actually reciprocates like the kind of love that he clearly feels for her. But I don't totally think that he's earned that from her. I actually think that there are a lot of points in this movie when he kind of seems to think he's better than her.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. He says it a lot.
that conversation that they have at the kitchen table when, after Alana has joined the wax campaign and she's criticizing Gary for his, hearing Joel Wax talk about
the legalization of pinball.
The legalization of pinball, and that, that as though he's ignoring other greater issues that are going on at that time. And like all he heard was pinball. There's a moment in that scene where almost verbatim, Gary has the good time interaction. Like, you think you're better than me. I am better than you.
Yeah.
And that's, but I like that. There is that as well. But then like, there's some of that on Alana's end in that scene too, where she's like, she also has a little bit of an overblown sense of what she is doing when she says, "You're talking about pinball machines. I'm a politician."
Yes, I do.
Well, there's that, but I also think that what she's actively seeking is growth outside of him.
Yeah.
I feel like the way this movie ends is suggesting that any growth outside of him is gonna now happen through the prism of some kind of weird, fucked up relationship that they're gonna try or whatever. And as you said, Alana Haim, believes that this kind of cycle kind of begins again. I would understand if the movie was a little more maybe satirical or cynical in its tone earlier, but it's not. And it's actually one of the things that I love about the movie is that it feels very sincere to these two characters. And to make the ending essentially Gary's wish fulfillment and a huge step back for Alana, I'm upset where this movie leaves her.
Yeah.
And I'll leave it there.
Yeah, I just, what I keep coming back to is that it's such a brief moment in this 2-hour plus runtime. Even if it's where it ends, I think that like the rest of the structure of the movie says more about where this is all going. And this is just, a kind of a moment of some certainty for them in the midst of all this. And that makes it feel more like an ending moment for the story. But yes. I don't think that the movie is going to just kind of negate itself in the last scene in the name of something of a suggestion of what's going to come later. I mean, well, I already mentioned Clueless, and I don't remember if we said this or if this was just like something I heard on a podcast elsewhere, but I feel like part of the conversation you could have at the end of that movie is like, do we think Cher and Josh really stay together that long? I mean, they're like 16 and 19. The ending there is presented as something that seems like, and they lived happily ever after. Come on. Do we really think they do?
But I'd say that's the case with most teen rom-coms.
Yeah.
It's like, I have, I think, no interest in knowing whether or not, like, Gordon and Lizzie and the Lizzie McGuire movie stay together. Like, it's not, I don't feel like that's totally relevant. I guess to this conversation, maybe it is because this is not a typical teenage rom-com.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, even movies that really feel like they have that.
I realize I said Gordon and it's Gordo. I have to fix that.
Okay.
Do you want to say it again or no?
No, I'm going to leave this part.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. But yeah, it's even in movies that I think maybe get a little less of this scrutiny. I feel like there is still that same tension between what feels like a really neat ending and the messiness of reality. Case in point, Clueless.
Yeah,
that's kind of where I stand on Licorice Pizza on the ending of it. Cool.
But this was fun to talk about, though, this ending, because it's the kind of ending that does inspire conversation.
I think so.
Yeah, and this isn't even the first one I've had about it.
Yeah, exactly. Did you guys notice anything else fun in the credits? I think we already pointed a few out.
Well, I think Paul Thomas Anderson is great at dedications.
Oh, yeah.
And the very last thing you see in the credits of this movie is that it is dedicated to Robert Downey Sr.
Yeah.
Who I really should know more about. That is a blind spot in my film knowledge. But speaking of P.T. Anderson and dedications, the other two that come directly to mind are that, and all are of people who had passed away closely before the film's releases, that in There Will Be Blood, the film is dedicated to Robert Altman. And Phantom Thread is dedicated to Jonathan Demme. So, yeah,
both influential filmmakers on his craft.
Very much so.
So, who do we think the upcoming Paul Thomas Anderson movie will be dedicated to?
David Lynch.
Maybe so.
I feel like this doesn't get said enough, but I like as aesthetically different as their movies are, I feel like David Lynch and Paul Thomas Anderson had some very similar styles of direction.
I see what you mean.
In that they're just very emotionally guided. And that David Lynch, the idea of him casting someone with no prior acting experience purely on vibes, as some people may say, that feels totally plausible. Would David Lynch have ever cast Alana Haim in a movie? Maybe. Sadly, we'll never know.
Yeah, one of the details that jumped out to me was that John Peters' assistant is a choreographer by the name of Ryan Heffington.
Mm-hmm.
And he is a very prolific choreographer. He's worked with a ton of people. The name that jumped out to me was Sia. He's won a number of awards for his choreography. And I love that in the movie, he says that he's worked with Julie Andrews.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt very much like it was playing on the actual actor's proximity to more modern musical female talent by dropping that line in. I just like that a lot.
Totally.
Cool.
Any other little details more broadly in the movie that you guys liked?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Do you like peanut butter sandwiches? Is that the weirdest pickup line that's ever been uttered?
That was John Peters' condition for having his name be used in the movie.
Is that so?
He granted Paul Thomas Anderson permission on the condition that he use his pickup line.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So
this
I
is
guess
good to
it
know.
did work for him if he was that proud of it this many years later.
I guess so.
Yeah. And
I mean, if you're John Peters, then maybe any line works.
Maybe? I don't know.
Or any line doesn't work.
That's true.
This I don't know if you'd call it a little detail, but we have to mention Barbara Streisand.
Streisand.
Yeah. So you have Bradley Cooper playing John Peters. You have Benny Safdie playing Joel Wax. And we haven't said as much about Sean Penn playing Jack Holden or anything at all about Tom Waits as Rex Blau.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen of the cock.
How he just appears through a smoke cloud.
I love that too.
I heard in an interview that Paul Thomas Anderson did with the Directors Guild of America that character was kind of an amalgam of a few people, but I think mainly based on a camera operator, a cinematographer who worked with John Ford.
Sounds about right.
Which is very believable, and the idea being that character, Rex Blau, came up in silent film.
Okay.
Yeah. Brief as it is, I love anytime Tom Waits is used in a movie, it's, just automatic points in my book.
Yeah.
All right. Can you guys go with me on this really quick?
We're on.
Okay. Sean Penn plays Jack Holden, a character who is modeled after actual film star William Holden. In Licorice Pizza, Jack Holden takes Alana to the tail of the cock, and the conversation gets very one-sided real fast, with him reliving his glory days as he is seemingly unable to not talk about anything but his work. In Network, the actual William Holden plays a character named Max Schumacher and goes on a date with a woman named Diana Christensen, and the conversation gets very one-sided very fast, and she gets caught up in her current professional glory and is seemingly unable to talk about anything but work. In summation, dating while being either proxy William Holden or a character played by the real William Holden is probably going to suck.
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah, the one that I really liked is when Alana's working in the campaign office and she's answering phones, and she answers the phone at one point in her hello, this is Councilman Wax office. How can I help you? And then she learns it's Danielle, and then her tone shifts so much.
Totally.
And I love that because I do that. I answer the phones here at insert name of the music school. This is Madeline. And then if I realize it's a person I know, one of our teachers calling, I'm like, hey, what's up? What can I help you with?
Right.
So I absolutely drop out of that customer service tone, and I really appreciate the representation.
Definitely. I also love that she carries over a little bit in that conversation. Danielle is like, there's going to be free Pepsi. And she's like, free Pepsi.
I'm trying to change the world.
Exactly.
You're talking about free Pepsi.
Yeah, I like that.
Speaking of Danielle, I mean, we talked about some great moments from Esty Haim earlier, but Danielle Haim, one moment of hers that maybe is unintentional, but that I really love in this movie is that during the scene after Alana has that blowout fight with Esty after the dinner date goes wrong, and they're she and Danielle are sitting on the curb, and then Danielle is just like, you got to stop being so mean to people all the time. And Alana's just like, fuck off, Danielle. And then Danielle, I mean, her eyes turn almost looking straight into the camera as if, she's
to
looking in
the camera,
saying I told you.
Nice.
So I don't think it's intentional, but I like that happens.
I like that there was live music being played at the opening of Fat Bernie's Environmental Living.
Absolutely.
It was a little too dark for me to judge if what you're hearing is actually being played.
Yeah, it's like I could more or less follow the chords and that they looked correct, but I don't know if they match with what was being played. That would be for you, Julian, Mr. Perfect Pitch.
Yeah. Also, the drum beat seemed in sync too.
There we go.
Yeah.
On the subject of music, though, real quick, because this movie has got a lot of great songs. Did you guys have a favorite needle drop?
The like bluesy one. Where is that? You know, guys know what I'm talking about.
Is that Let Me Roll?
Yeah. That was my favorite.
The Wings
the
one.
Paul
I like that
McCartney.
one too.
That's a great
good.
one too. I also, I mentioned it already, but the Life on Mars needle drop I think is great, as well as the one that I don't know that there's much reason to this, but I always just enjoy when Gary walks into that the first time he sees a waterbed in a different shop and just accentuate the positives.
I also like that this waterbed's in a wig shop.
Yeah.
Totally.
For some reason.
Did you catch the name of the actor who plays the shop owner there?
It's Leonardo DiCaprio's dad.
Yes,
Oh,
George
cool.
DiCaprio.
Yeah, so weird.
Yeah.
Mine is when Alana and Gary have that fight kind of towards the end, and he storms off and actually drives the car.
Mm-hmm.
When the car radio turns on, it is 7 Rooms of Gloom by the Four Tops. Levi Stubbs' unmistakable voice. I like that one a lot.
Love it.
Sweet.
Alrighty. We've
all right.
done this.
Yeah, this is a great movie, and there's a lot more still that I feel like I could say about it, but I feel like we've reached the point of universe sharing.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
I have a very short one.
Go for it.
I could start.
Yeah.
I just want to say that man said he was the real Herman Munster, and I think he's telling the truth. I think that Herman normally works at a funeral home, but is trying to pick up a little bit of extra cash by going around to teen fairs and possibly like early Comic-Con style conventions. But he will be going home after his hard day of work to his vampire wife and father-in-law, his werewolf son, and their pet fire-breathing dragon. That's it.
Well, while we're on that character, when you consider who played Herman Munster in real life, this is not even unlikely. Would be a confirmed fact that, eventually that actor we see in the movie goes on to play a very stern judge in a misguided murder trial in Alabama about 20 years after the movie is set.
I definitely, in that episode, had considered doing the Munsters, so I'm glad I got to do it now.
Yes, and that is, of course, Fred Gwynn being in My Cousin Vinny. I have a proper unlikely shared universe that I can share with you both now.
Go for it.
So this concerns another character who we don't see for a very long time in the film, but still has a very memorable presence, and that character is Matthew, who is the secret boyfriend of Joel Wax.
Mm-hmm.
So we only see him being very unceremoniously dumped in one of his 2 scenes in the movie. But let's say that this guy, Matthew, that, he knows that being connected to this particular politician who is closeted has its publicity risks. So Matthew is not his real name. His real name is rather Dick Pavich. And after we see him get dumped by Joel Wax, that he is unhappy not only with how that relationship turned out, but with his residence in the San Fernando Valley as a whole. And so to escape this seemingly miserable existence that he has fallen into there, he moves upstate to San Francisco in the following year. And then eventually, don't look at my screen right now.
No, this is a first because we've done the exact same thing.
Okay.
We didn't do the thing before.
We've done the exact same thing, but continue. Go for it.
Eventually, Dick, as he is really known, moves up north to San Francisco and becomes involved in local politics and, assists in the campaign of a new up-and-coming politician who is running for the city's board of supervisors. And, that may not sound like a very auspicious position, but it is auspicious given the sexuality of this candidate and his openness about it. Do we know what I am talking about?
I'm assuming that you do, since you seem to have done it. I mean, I'm assuming this is Milk because of
Milk. This is Milk.
You mentioning I haven't seen this, but you mentioning the sexuality of the candidate in San Francisco. So I'm like, okay, Harvey Milk.
Yeah, this is Milk, and the actor Joseph Cross plays Dick Pavich in the film Milk. And I just think it's interesting that Licorice Pizza is set pretty close in time to that movie.
Similar themes for this character.
Exactly. Themes. So, yeah, hence unlikely shared universe.
I actually would still be curious to hear yours, Emilio.
Do you want to hear mine?
Yeah, I do.
So this is a first on our podcast. We've done I don't know, almost 50 of these?
Yeah.
Oh, I see what you're talking about now.
Yeah. So we didn't confer before this time around, but I'll jump into mine though. Okay. In Licorice Pizza, we are introduced pretty far into the runtime. I love this. To Matthew, a young man who is in an intimate relationship with City Councilman Joel Wax. Due to Wax's elevated status in the public, being a mayoral candidate in the thick of his campaign, Joel feels he must keep his relationship with Matthew under wraps, much to Matthew's dismay and frustration. When these attempts to avoid political embarrassment include roping in Alana, a campaign volunteer, to act as Matthew's girlfriend, it is the final straw for him. Not long after this incident, Matthew breaks it off with Joel Wax for good and decides living his authentic self openly is priority number one. He doesn't ditch the idea of aligning with someone politically, however. On the contrary, he becomes driven to make legislative changes. So Matthew relocates a little further north, but in the same state, to San Francisco, and decides he wants a fresh start. Under a new name, Richard Pavich, he gets in with the gay community there and quickly makes friends with an up-and-coming political figure who, with Matthew, Pavich's help, as his campaign manager and close confidant, wins a seat in San Francisco's Board of Supervisors, making him the first openly gay man to be voted in major public office in California.
Very nice.
Okay, well, much better said than how I did it.
I know you were kind of riffing.
I was riffing. I didn't get time to write down the paragraph before we recorded.
I think it's interesting that Sean Penn is in Licorice Pizza, and then he's also in the movie that you're connecting to.
I agree as well. I think there are many threads here we can do with it.
But to say that Jack Holden is secretly Harvey Milk, that feels like a bigger stretch.
I'm with you on that.
Yeah, I mean, the age disparity alone seems... never mind, that didn't make any sense. Go back.
Very, very quickly, there's one callback to make to a past. It wasn't a fully wrought out Unlikely Shared Universe, but in our Super Bad Booksmart episode, I did suggest that, that the character Jared in Booksmart maybe has a father named Lance who grew up in the San Fernando Valley around this time and once had a really doomed date at a young woman named Alana's house.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping you would do Space Buddies again.
I thought about it.
There's something there.
You know, we were talking about this earlier, and I feel like I want to hear from the listeners about this. Gary Valentine or Max Fisher. If you had to have one of these two as a business partner, which one would you choose? Yes, please let us know your choice between these two. We'll be doing a poll on our Instagram, so you can jump over there to vote. Or you can also go to the link in our episode description if you are not Instagram inclined. Yeah, I feel like if you guys have some really interesting answers, we would be more than happy to share them on mic as well. Since we're talking about this now, do we have our own preferences? Gary Valentine or Max Fisher? My gut is telling me Gary Valentine, only because I feel like he's somebody who is actively looking for something financially viable. I feel like Max is a little bit too head in the clouds. I agree with that. I think, Max is great at doing a vanity project, but Gary Valentine, when you see in Licorice Pizza that when things fall apart for him, he can rise again pretty quickly and without too much ado about it. Yeah, I got to say though, I would be curious to hear other people's thoughts because Max is quite the character, and I feel like there is an argument there. Totally. I feel like they both have a lot of time to grow. So I don't know that I have a choice yet. I'm going to be keeping a close eye on each of them over the next few years. And tune in for my answer 3 years from now. When Wes Anderson releases Rushmore 2. Exactly. And we will also be keeping an eye on our email. You can always email us at sleeplesscinematicpod@gmail.com or our Instagram poll. We'd love to hear what you guys have to say.
Any additional thoughts to finish off?
Mm-mm.
I guess I'll just say I still love the movie a lot. And well, at the time we're recording this, and by the time it's released too, there is a new Paul Thomas Anderson film on the horizon.
Yeah.
One Battle After Another, which I'm very curious to see. And apropos of this discussion, Alana Haim will also be appearing in.
Yeah, and as we said, there's a new Haim album upcoming. So
Yes,
I think,
quit.
We're very excited about the new things happening from both this director and its star.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. I think she has a smaller role in this next movie, but still
a role.
Exactly.
I would say that even though I have issues with the very end of this film, a lot of what I enjoy about this movie is not really tainted by that. I have compartmentalized my feelings a bit. So yeah, for the most part, this is a wonderful film, a really sweet film. And I think one that feels like it's more than sight and sound to me. I feel like there's a little there are more senses at play when I see this. And I think it's a credit to the performances. I think it's a credit to Paul Thomas Anderson and so yeah, it's still a very, very good movie that I would watch again in a heartbeat, honestly.
Yeah, I had a good time revisiting this movie, and I think this is one that I'll keep coming back to. I think that in a lot of ways, this can feel like a comfort movie. I think it's very cozy. It's just like a good hang. I think we've said a few times. I really do feel that. And I appreciate that in a movie.
Definitely.
And I appreciate like a naturalistic performance like you get from each of our leads here. So
absolutely. And though There Will Be Blood may not really be a comfort movie, I would have similar praises for kind of all of Paul Thomas Anderson's movies.
Yeah.
He's really not made a bad one.
Yeah.
You're right about that.
Speaking of other movies.
Well, so there's a very notable needle drop that occurs in Licorice Pizza of the song Life on Mars, which was also used for the trailer of the film when it before it had been released in 2021. And well, the next time you hear us talk about musicians turned actors, that particular musician turned actor is going to be David Bowie.
Very nice.
In a film that, as of now, we all have not yet seen, which is one of his most memorable acting turns, The Man Who Fell to Earth.
Yeah, I've seen Nicholas Roeg's other two films from the 1970s, Walkabout and Don't Look Now.
Yeah.
And so I'm really curious to fill in this gap for that reason, but also just to spend some time with Bowie.
Yeah, totally. I actually have the Man Who Fell to Earth poster torn out of like a magazine on my fridge.
Oh.
And I'm not sure. I think Dougie got it. I don't know exactly where it came from. So I feel like I have to finally watch this movie because I've been looking at this poster every day for like 2 or 3 years.
Wow.
And I don't know why I never was like, oh yeah, I really got to watch that. So I'm looking forward to it.
Long time coming.
I've seen 0 Nicholas Roeg movies at this point too, so I'm excited to finally get cracking on that.
Totally.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Well, in addition to this podcast, you can follow us on TikTok and Instagram at Sleepless Cinematic Pod. You can contact us via email. We love when we hear from you. Write to us at sleeplesscinematicpod@gmail.com. If you're on Letterboxd, you can follow me, Madeline, at Patroness of Cats.
And you can follow me, Julian, at Julian_Barthold. If you're listening to us for the first time, thanks for finding us. If this is the second or third or 50th time you've listened to us, thanks for sticking with us. We have really grown to love doing this, and it means the world to have our budding listenership grow.
And if you haven't already, we'd ask you, return listener, to please write a positive review and rate us on your podcast platform of choice. Short and sweet works. This is one of the best ways for new listeners to find us and help our podcast take its next steps. You can also keep it grassroots. You can tell a friend to tell 20 other friends about the Sleepless Cinematic Podcast. That helps too.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Gary Haim.